Hi, welcome. This is a lesson on solving quadratic equations by factoring. And a lot of this goes back to the zero product property. It says if the product of multiple factors is equal to zero, then at least one factor is equal to zero. We sometimes see that written in this way. If x times y equals zero, then x equals zero, or y equals zero. Could be also that both x and y are equal to zero. And keep in mind that this only works for zero. That is to say, if I have x times y equal to 3, that doesn't tell us anything about either x or y in regards to it being 3. But x times y equals 0, then that gives us something. So, for example, 4 times some number equals 0, we know that other number has to be 0. All right, if we've got x plus 3 times x minus 2 equals 0, then we can say that it's like our x plus 3 is like our first term here, x, and our x minus 2, that's our other factor. And so we know that either x plus 3 equals 0 or x minus 2 equals 0. So we have an equation there we can solve for each of these. So I'd say x plus 3 equals 0. I subtract 3 from both sides. X then is equal to negative 3. Or I can take x minus 2 equals 0 and add 2 to both sides of my equal sign. Cancels the 2's. X then is equal to 2. And so our solution set is x equals or negative 3 or positive 2. And both of those would work to make this work. All right, let's look at number 2. Here we've got two factors. X is one of them. Either x equals 0 or 2x minus 5 equals 0. And in the case of x equals 0, I don't need to do anything with it. That's the solution. It's already isolated. The variable is isolated. X equals 0. But in the case of 2x minus 5, I need to go through and solve that equation. So first I get rid of the part that doesn't have the variable, minus 5. I would do that by adding 5 to both sides. That leaves 2x is equal to 0 plus 5 with 5. And then the opposite of multiplying by 2 is divide by 2. So I divide both sides by 2. And x is equal to 5 halves. So those two are solutions. We would write that our solution set is 0 or 5 halves. All right, let's look at the steps then. It says factor if needed. It's needed if they're not already factored. Those two examples we just did, these problems were already factored. 1 was factored and 2 was factored. Set each factor equal to 0 and then solve for x in both equations. Most of the time you'll have 2 answers. Sometimes you can have more. Okay. Another thing you want to make sure is that it's in standard form. So 3x squared plus 7x equals 20. Remember, it doesn't work for anything other than 0. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 20 from both sides here. And that would give me 3x squared plus 7x minus 20 on the left is equal to, and then 20 minus 20 is 0. Now it's equal to 0. Now we can factor this. And so 3x squared minus or plus 7x minus 20, I'm going to say my AC is 3 times negative 20. That'd be negative 60. And my b value is 7. And so I'd say 1 times 60 is 60. Since it's negative 60, I'm going to put the negative on one of the numbers. If I put it on the 60 and add them, they give me a negative result. But since b is positive, I'm going to put the negative on the 1. When I multiply negative 1 times 60, I get negative 60. And negative 1 plus 60 is 59. And so those aren't the numbers, but at least the sign is correct. So negative 2 times 30, and that'd be 28. Again, not it. Negative 3 times 20 is negative 60, and negative 3 plus 20 is 17. Again, that's not it. Negative 4 times 15 is negative 60, and negative 4 plus 15 would be 11. Not it. We're getting closer. Negative 5 times 12 is negative 60. Negative 5 plus 12 is 7. Those are the numbers that we're looking for because we want it to be equal to 7 in the sum. Because negative 5 plus 12 is 7. All right, so here I can use the box. Let's go ahead and use the box. So I put 3x squared here and minus 20 here. The 7x, we're going to use the two numbers that we found, negative 5x and plus 12x. So if you combine those two, you get the 7x that's in the middle. So we factor out the greatest common factor for each row and each column. In this row, they both have an x in common. In this one, they have looks like 4 in common. And up here, these both have a 3 and an x in common. And over here, we have a 5. And since they're both negative, I'm going to put minus 5. And then I'm just going to double check. 3x times x is 3x squared. Yes. 3x times 4 is 12x. Yes. Negative 5 times x, negative 5x. Yes. And negative 5 times 4 is negative 20. Yep. So our two factors, 3x minus 5 and x, this is positive x plus 4, equals 0. And since these two things are equal to 0, that means either one of them has to be 0 or the other has to be equal to 0, or both. So I set them each equal to 0. 3x minus 5 equals 0, or x plus 4 equals 0. And here I'm going to add 5. That cancels the 5s. 3x then equals 5, and then to divide by 3, x equals 5/3. Over here I subtract 4 from both sides, and x then equals negative 4. And so our solution set is x is equal to, solution set, negative 4 or 5/3. The order doesn't really matter, but we usually list them in order from least to greatest. So negative 4 is smaller than 5/3. So, all right, let's look at 9x squared equals 25. Once again, subtract 25 from both sides to get it equal to 0. So 9x squared minus 25 equals 0. And I look at this and say, hey, this might be a difference of squares. Is this something squared minus something else squared? And if it is, then I can factor it using a difference of squares. And here I can put 3x in here, and that would be equal to 9x squared. And over here I can put 5, and that's equal to 25 squared. So this factors to 3x plus 5 and 3x minus 5, and this is equal to 0. Then I take each of these factors and I set them equal to 0. 3x plus 5 equals 0, or 3x minus 5 equals 0. And in this case, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, leaving 3x is equal to negative 5. Then divide by 3. X then is equal to negative 5 thirds. Over here, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. 3x then is equal to positive 5. And dividing by 3 gives me that x is equal to positive 5 thirds. And so our solution set is negative 5 thirds. X can be equal to negative 5 thirds or positive 5 thirds. All right, number 5. This one is already in standard form. It's equal to 0. So we can look at how to factor this. I look at 8, 10, and 12. First, I want to check for greatest common factor, which in this case there is a greatest common factor, and each of these are even, so I can divide out a 2. 2 times 4x squared plus 5x minus 6 equals 0. If I take the 2 out of each of those terms, that's what I'm left with. 2 times 4, 8, 2 times 5, 10, and 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. Now I want to see what's my AC, and I'm going to just look at the inside of the parentheses. AC, A is 4, and C is negative 6, so that's negative 24. AC is A times C. B is 5. So now I'm going to look for numbers that multiply to negative 24 and add to 5. And I'm just going to follow this kind of procedure here. 1 times 24. I'm going to put the negative on the 1 so that when I multiply negative 1 times 24, I get negative 24. But when I add negative 1 plus 24, I get 23. And so it's not it, but the sign is correct. Negative 2 times 12. And that gives me 10 when I add them. No. Negative 3 times 8. And that's negative 24. Negative 3 plus 8 is 5. Those are the numbers we're looking for. So we'll go back, use the box. Put 4x squared up here, minus 6 here, minus 3x, and plus 8x, using these numbers negative 3 and positive 8. Then I look at what their greatest common factors is. Here it would be x. Here it would be 2. Up here it would be 4x. And over here it would be minus 3. So just double check. 4x times x is 4x squared. X times minus 3 is minus 3x. 4x times 2 is plus 8x. And 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. So my factors, 4x minus 3 and x plus 2 equals 0. And I also have this factor 2 that I factored out at the beginning. So I need to bring it down as well. So I have 3 factors, 2, 4x minus 3, and x plus 2. But 2 cannot ever be equal to 0. 2 is 2. It doesn't have a variable with it. It's not 2x. It's just 2. And so I can forget about that and only just list these 2, which will make this equal to 0 when I multiply them. So 4x minus 3 equals 0, or x plus 2 equals 0. And I'm going to solve each of those. Add 3 and add 3. 4x then equals 0 plus 3, or 3. Then divide by 4. Divide by 4. And x then is equal to 3/4. Or on the other side, I subtract 2 from both sides. This is just a single step equation, so x equals negative 2. And so my solution set is x is equal to or -2 or 3/4. And those would be the two solutions for this problem. All right, let's look at number 6. So number 6, I'm going to subtract 25 from both sides. And that gives me -x² minus 10x minus 25 equals 0. Because I have a leading coefficient that's negative, I can get rid of that by multiplying both sides of my equation by -1. And that way I don't have to deal with factoring a polynomial that has a negative leading coefficient. So -1 times -x² becomes +x² plus 10x. You're distributing it through the whole parentheses. That's plus 10x, and then minus 25 becomes plus 25 equals, and then 0 times -1 is still just 0. I look at this and I say, hey, I think this is a candidate for a perfect square trinomial. If I've got something squared, which is kind of like our a term, plus 2 times something that's a here and b, and then plus something else squared, and that's like our b, all this is equal to 0. If it fits in this pattern, then it's a perfect square trinomial, and then I can just jump straight to what my factors are. So I know that x squared is x squared, so my a is x, and I know that b is 5. 5 squared is 25, and so b is 5. And I just check to see if 2 times x times 5 is 10x. 2 times x is 2x, times 5 is 10x. So sure enough, now I can just go straight to my factors, which are x and 5 with a plus in between them. That's equal to 0. So what that means, x plus 5 squared is the same as x plus 5 times x plus 5 equals 0. And they're the same, so I don't need to solve it twice. I can just solve it once. So I just say x plus 5 equals 0. Subtract 5 from both sides. X then is equal to -5. And in this case, that is the only solution, since it's the same solution here as it is here. And I think that does it for us. Practice, practice, practice. Do your homework. You'll do great.